Imagine you own a rental property, right? And your tenant has virtually zero traditional income. They require round-the-clock medical or maybe behavioral care.
Which sounds like a massive red flag for any investor.
Exactly. It sounds terrifying. But what if I told you that in this scenario, your monthly rent check is actually one of the most stable, guaranteed payments in the entire real estate market?
It really does sound like a total contradiction when you first hear it.
It completely does. I mean, on the surface, you're thinking, how is that even possible? But in places like Maine, it's actually the foundation of a very specific, and I'd say heavily misunderstood, investment blueprint.
Yeah, because it challenges those core assumptions, that most people have about real estate.
Yeah.
We tend to view social impact and reliable cash flow as these two forces that are just constantly working against each other.
Right, like you either maximize your profit or you run a charity. Pick one.
Exactly. But the mechanics of this specific model prove that that doesn't actually have to be the case.
Which is exactly what we are unpacking today. So, welcome to the Deep Dive. This is a special installment of our ongoing state-by-state series called Assisted Living Facilities versus Special Needs Housing, Knowing the Difference.
And today, we are focusing squarely on the state of Maine.
We are. And before we get too deep into the weeds here, I should definitely note that this series is supported by Flowers and Associates Property Rentals. They are a firm that basically specializes in helping landlords create and stabilize rental income.
Which ties in perfectly with what we're talking about today.
It really does, because our primary source material for this deep dive is a 2026 guide written by their founder, Robert Flowers. He's an award-winning real estate investor, and the guide is titled Special Needs Housing versus Assisted Living Facilities in Maine: What Property Owners Should Know.
And I have to say, it is a really dense, highly practical piece of material. The author isn't just, speaking in hypotheticals here.
Right, he's actually doing it.
Exactly. He's charting the exact regulatory fault lines in Maine, showing where everyday investors accidentally cross over from just being a landlord into being an unlicensed healthcare provider, which, that is where the real nightmares begin.
Oh, man. Yeah, so let's establish that fault line right away. Because I know when most property owners hear the phrase housing for people who need help, their brain immediately jumps to an assisted living facility.
Oh, 100%.
They picture, like, buying a big old Victorian house, renovating a few bedrooms and bringing in older folks who just need a little help with their daily routines.
And that default assumption is incredibly dangerous. I mean, from a legal and a financial perspective.
Because it's not just real estate anymore.
No, not at all. In Maine, assisted living is not a real estate venture. It is fundamentally a care business. It's heavily governed by the Maine Department of Health and Human Services, DHHS.
Okay, so you're stepping right into government healthcare territory.
You are. You operate under a very strict set of guidelines known as Chapter 113 rules.
And for our listeners who are, already familiar with standard residential zoning and basic landlord-tenant law, Chapter 113 is just a completely different universe.
A different universe is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
I mean, these rules cover assisted housing programs, residential care facilities, adult day programs. Under Chapter 113, you aren't just providing a roof over someone's head.
Right. You're legally on the hook for so much more.
Exactly. You are legally responsible for meals, housekeeping, laundry, personal care support, so like bathing and mobility. You have to provide medication assistance and 204/7 safety supervision.
Wait, 204/7 supervision, so you basically have to staff the place around the clock.
Yes. And I want to pause on the physical building requirements for a second, too, because that's where a real estate investor's wallet is going to take the biggest hit.
Oh, for sure. You can't just put a fresh coat of paint on a duplex and call it assisted living.
Not even close. You're talking about commercial-grade fire suppression systems. You have to widen hallways for specialized wheelchair access. You're installing commercial kitchens that actually have to pass DHHS food safety inspections.
Right, so you're running a restaurant now, too.
Basically. And you need backup generator systems that can sustain life-saving medical equipment during a blizzard. Which, in Maine is a very real scenario.
So, okay, let's unpack this. It sounds like running an assisted living facility is basically trying to manage a boutique hotel and a mini hospital at the exact same time.
That is a brutally accurate analogy.
You aren't just a landlord anymore. You're a 247 lifestyle and healthcare manager. You're building a healthcare infrastructure totally from scratch.
Plus, you have all the operational overhead. You need massive capital to hire and retain trained medical staff in an incredibly competitive labor market. You're dealing with medical liability insurance, which is a exponentially more expensive than a standard landlord policy.
Oh, I can't even imagine those premiums.
They're huge.
Yeah.
And then you have to manage patient records, IPA compliance, ongoing DHHS inspections. It never ends.
And look, while that is incredibly vital work, I mean, we absolutely need people building assisted living facilities for our aging population. It essentially forces a standard real estate investor to completely abandon what they're actually good at.
And that is exactly the trap. You go in thinking, oh, I'm buying an income-producing asset, and you end up operating a 24-hour healthcare startup.
Which you probably have no business running.
Right. If you don't have millions in backing and deep operational experience in healthcare administration, Chapter 113 will absolutely bury you.
Okay, so if Chapter 113 makes it nearly impossible for a mom-and-pop investor or even a mid-level syndicator to run a care facility, how are regular people supposed to help house vulnerable adults without going completely bankrupt? There has to be a middle ground here.
There is, and it brings us to the alternative model that's outlined in the source material. Special needs housing. This is where the paradigm shifts entirely. In Maine, special needs housing serves a really diverse range of populations. We're talking about adults with intellectual or developmental disabilities, individuals on the autism spectrum, people with physical disabilities, veterans.
So a much broader group than just elderly care.
Much broader. It also includes those facing homelessness and people in recovery.
Got it. Now here's the crucial distinction, and this is the absolute game changer for the property owner listening to this. It's the functional separation between the physical building and the human services.
Yes. Let's use a technology metaphor for this. Think of it as hardware and software.
Oh, I like that. So the landlord provides the hardware. You own the physical structure, the house, the duplex, whatever. Your job is just to make sure the roof doesn't leak, the heat actually works in January, the environment is safe, and it meets local codes. You are managing the hardware.
Exactly, and the actual daily care. That's the software. The property owner does not provide the software.
That's someone else's job.
Right. That software is installed and managed by outside entities, so nonprofits, case managers, or behavioral health organizations. They bring in the trained staff, they manage the daily schedules, they handle the medication. You simply provide a secure, stable platform for their software to run on.
This source mentions something specific here. It says that Maine DHHS utilizes something called shared living as a housing option for people who are eligible for Maine Care HCBS waiver services.
Yes.
Whoa, hold on. HCBS waiver services. For a landlord listening right now, that just sounds like an absolute mountain of government red tape. What exactly is a waiver in this context, and how does it translate to rent actually getting paid?
I know it sounds like jargon, but it's a critical piece of the puzzle to decode because it's literally the financial engine of this entire model. HCBS stands for Home and Community-Based Services.
Yeah.
Historically, Medicaid would only pay for care if a person lived in a massive institutional facility. A waiver literally waives that old rule. It allows a state, like Maine, to take those Medicaid dollars and use them to support a person living out in the actual community.
So the money follows the person, not the building.
Precisely. The waiver pays for the care staff, the transportation, the daily support, but those support agencies desperately need physical houses in residential neighborhoods to actually place their clients. They have the government funding for the care, they just completely lack the real estate.
Okay, I have to jump in with some heavy skepticism here, because I know exactly what every seasoned investor listening is thinking right now.
Let's hear it.
You keep saying it's strategic partnering with these agencies, but let's look at a worst-case scenario. Say a tenant is having a severe mental health crisis and breaks a window at 2 a.m. or causes a bunch of water damage. Who gets the phone call? The nonprofit or the landlord?
It's a great question.
Because if I own the building, my fear is that I'm still the one holding the bag, paying for the repairs, and dealing with the fallout in the middle of the night.
It is easily the most common and most valid fear property owners have. But this is where the specific mechanics of the lease agreement come into play. In many of these special needs housing models, you aren't just signing a standard, one-off lease with a vulnerable individual.
It's not.
No. You are often structuring what is called a master lease directly with the nonprofit or the care provider itself.
Oh, so the agency is technically your tenant.
Often, yes. Or they act as a corporate guarantor. The nonprofit signs a multi-year lease for the property. So if a window gets broken at 2 a.m., the 24/7 on-call staff from the care agency handles the immediate crisis because they are already deeply involved in that client's specific care plan.
That makes so much sense.
And financially, the master lease dictates that the agency is responsible for returning the property in its original condition minus standard wear and tear, of course.
Wow. Okay, that significantly changes the risk profile. You are essentially leasing your property to a fully funded, government-backed organization rather than just taking a gamble on an individual tenant's credit score.
And think about the stability of that. A nonprofit doesn't suddenly lose its job. They don't decide to randomly move to another state on a whim because they, I don't know, want to change of scenery.
Right, they're rooted in the community.
Exactly. Their funding is tied to multi-year state and federal grants. When they find a good landlord with a safe, well-maintained property, they want to stay there for a decade. It virtually eliminates your turnover costs, your marketing costs, and your vacancy rates.
It also means your barrier to entry is just standard real estate capital. You don't need a commercial kitchen or specialized medical zoning. You can utilize existing single-family homes, side-by-side duplexes, or just small multifamily units. You focus on making the property functional rather than, outfitting a medical facility.
Which is why we really need to look at how this is actually executed in the real world. The theory is sound, obviously, but the mechanics of finding these agencies and structuring these deals requires a proven blueprint.
And the source material points us directly to the author's own operations for that blueprint. Robert Flowers isn't just writing theoretical guides here. He's been executing this model for over 15 years.
He really has the track record to back it up.
Definitely. His firm, Flowers & Associates, is an A-plus BBB accredited organization featured in Who's Who, and they operate primarily out of Memphis, Tennessee.
And the Memphis strategy is a perfect case study in matching local real estate with systemic community needs. Flowers & Associates utilize special needs housing by basically acting as the bridge.
The bridge between the housing and the care.
Right. They acquire and stabilize the real estate and then actively court local nonprofits who are burdened with massive wait lists for housing.
They are playing the ultimate matchmaker. They figure out exactly what kind of physical footprint the local disability agencies need. Maybe it's a 3-bedroom ranch with 0-step entry or a quiet duplex away from heavy traffic, and they supply exactly that hardware.
And by doing so, they achieve that dual mandate we talked about at the top of the deep dive. They secure reliable, passive income streams through these agency partnerships while simultaneously pulling individuals out of precarious housing situations or state institutions.
It's incredible. They are solving a community crisis using standard residential real estate.
But the reason this 2026 guide exists is to show that this blueprint is entirely portable. The source makes it crystal clear that anyone can implement this strategy into their own portfolio.
Right, you don't have to live in Memphis.
No, you just have to understand the local demographics of your own market. Which brings us back to Maine. The guide specifically highlights communities like Portland, Lewiston, Bangor, South Portland, Auburn, Augusta, Biddeford, and Sanford.
And these are places that desperately need this exact kind of supportive housing.
I'd argue that the need in those Maine cities is even more acute than in many larger metropolitan areas. Let's look at why. Portland, for example, has seen skyrocketing standard market rents over the last few years.
Oh, Portland's market is wild right now.
It is, and it has pushed vulnerable populations entirely out of the standard housing pool. Standard Section 8 vouchers often can't even compete there anymore.
Right, the math just completely breaks down for low-income residents.
Exactly. Meanwhile, cities like Lewiston and Bangor have a lot of older multifamily housing stock. Big, historic homes that were chopped into duplexes or triplexes decades ago.
Perfect for this model.
They are prime targets for special needs housing conversion. You don't need to build from the ground up. You can repurpose existing aging stock.
But what about zoning? I mean, if I buy a duplex in a quiet neighborhood in Bangor and try to lease it to a disability services agency, aren't the neighbors going to show up to the city council with pitchforks?
It happens.
NIMBism, not in my backyard, is a huge hurdle for any kind of supportive housing, isn't it?
It is a hurdle, definitely. But this is where understanding the Fair Housing Act becomes your absolute strongest asset as an investor. Under federal law, individuals with disabilities are a protected class.
Okay.
Municipalities cannot use local single-family zoning ordinances to discriminate against a group home or a shared living arrangement if it operates functionally like a family unit.
So local zoning boards can't just ban this type of housing because they, or the neighbors, don't like it.
They cannot. The Fair Housing Act mandates reasonable accommodations in rules, policies, and practices. If you are partnering with an agency to house, say, 3 adults with intellectual disabilities who receive daily support staff legally, that is treated as a residential household.
Wow. not a commercial healthcare facility.
Exactly. You completely bypass the massive commercial zoning fights that a 50-bed assisted living facility would have to wage.
That is a massive tactical advantage. You get to utilize standard residential zoning, but tap into institutional-grade stability. And it scales to whatever size property you have. You don't need a massive commercial footprint to make a dent in this problem in Augusta. You can literally use a standard duplex.
It bridges the gap perfectly. You get to stay in your lane as a real estate investor. You focus on property acquisition, maintenance, capital improvements, but you are leveraging that asset to empower the organizations that are doing the actual heavy lifting of daily human care.
So, bringing all these mechanics together, the core takeaway for anyone managing a real estate portfolio today is that you have a fundamental choice in how you interact with the care economy.
You really do. You can choose to take on the heavy regulation, the medical liability, the specialized staffing, and just the sheer operational intensity of Chapter 113 by opening an assisted living facility.
Which, again, is vital work, but it requires a very specific type of specialized operator. It's not for the faint of heart.
Definitely not. Or you can choose the special needs housing model. You can be the critical real estate partner for the organizations already doing the pair work.
You manage the hardware, they manage the software.
Exactly. You provide the sanctuary, they provide the support.
It's just a brilliant balance of risk mitigation and social impact. Maine, like practically every other state right now, is facing a severe shortage of supportive housing. For the everyday property owner, stepping in to fill that void doesn't have to mean sacrificing your financial security. In fact, through master leases and government waivers, it often enhances it.
Absolutely.
If this breakdown has sparked something for you and you want to look at the actual step-by-step mechanics of executing this in your own market, how to find the agencies, how to structure the leases, how to underwrite the deals, we highly recommend checking out Robert Flowers' book.
I agree. It's a must-read for this space.
It is called The Joy of Helping Others, Creating Passive Income Streams Through Special Needs Housing.
It really is the definitive operational manual for making these partnerships work on the ground.
It really is. To get started or to learn more about the specific property investment packages they offer, you can contact his team directly. Their number is 901-621-3544. That number again is 901-621-3544. Or you can find them online. Just visit flowersandassociatesbooking.com/property listings. All one word, flowersandassociatesbooking.com/property listings.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the source material, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. We spend so much time in this industry analyzing cap rates, appreciation, cash-on-cash returns. We view our portfolios as ledgers.
Right, just numbers on a page.
But if our homes are our ultimate sanctuaries, what happens to the fabric of our society when standard real estate investors start viewing their properties merely as square footage to be monetized and start viewing them as vital puzzle pieces in the local healthcare ecosystem?
Could the solution to our massive housing and care crises simply be a matter of better, more intelligent partnerships between the people who own the buildings and the people who care for the residents? It's definitely something to think about the next time you're analyzing a property or just looking at a standard for rent sign. Until next time.